This is Spotlight Omaha. Spotlight Omaha is a local podcast that highlights local businesses and influential movers and shakers in the Omaha business community. Spotlight Omaha is brought to you by Pixel Fire Marketing. Now, from the Pyramid Contractor Studios, the host of Spotlight Omaha, Jimmy Allen.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome into the Spotlight Omaha podcast, where we take you around the city of Omaha, introduce you to local business owners, influential figures, and people who are making impact on the Omaha community. We are brought to you by Pixel Fire Marketing. Pixel Fire Marketing is here to help if you need help with your social media content, search engine optimization, and website design. If you're not popping up at the top of Google listings, or maybe you're not even showing up when you Google your business, check out pixelfiremarketing.com today. Joining us inside the Pyramid Contractor Studio is Matthew Schleuning of Fencing Company of Omaha. Matt, thanks for being here, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for the invite.
I got to ask first, is it Matt or Matthew? I know some people are very sticklers about
Matt is fine.
Matt is fine.
Matt
Okay.
is fine.
Hey, what is Fencing Company of Omaha, and what do you guys do?
So we build fence. We are dipping into commercial, and we mainly focus on residential. We do wood, vinyl, ornamental, PVC, composite, really any type you can think of we can make happen.
You guys offer financing on your website. Why is that such a big deal for the homeowner in today's market?
We do. So financing is a huge game changer. I think if a company can offer it, they should. So what it does, it opens up your customer base. I mean, not a lot of people have $8,000 to $10,000 with, in
the couch
expendable money for a fence. And unfortunately, sometimes, a fence isn't detrimental. Like, people don't really need a fence unless they have animals or HOAs around here. But it just broadens the scope of who we can service. I mean, people will take a payment, $150 a month payment, over forking out a $10,000 check. And, I would.
Right. I think most people would. The HOA portion of it is interesting, man. I didn't think about it until you brought it up, but that's got to be a great in way for you guys when it's a requirement to live here to have a fence. We got a fencing company that you might need.
Yeah. And some HOAs are pretty big sticklers, but what that does, it keeps them all, they're nice up here. I mean, the HOAs are very nice, and they're very,
that's the point. Keep the neighborhood nice.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah. And I live in HOA now, and I kind of like it, because it keeps your house looking presentable and, nice.
Your wife must not order as many Amazon gift packages as mine.
Oh gosh. Yeah, Christmas time is like, they probably know us by name by now.
Hey, you guys also offer a free estimate, and you're helping with financing. You're helping people get their foot in the door as well. Why is it such a big deal to go to a homeowner and say, hey, we'll come out and tell you what we're going to offer at no cost?
Well, I think a lot of people are afraid to spend the money because, because estimates, you can see them charging from $50 to $200 depending on where you're at. I mean, if you're an hour away and they're going to charge for estimates, they're going to charge mileage and all that. And I think what it does, it keeps you competitive, and you're not gouging the customer. I mean, because it costs companies money to...
It's time.
Yeah, time, fuel, and, if you're paying somebody, it costs companies money. But what I learned is a lot of people like just to see who they're doing business with, get a feel for this person. Yeah, especially if you're going to be, spending money, they want to know who they're spending money with, especially if you're a local company. But we do offer the service, and I've learned that some people don't want other people at their house, so we can even have we do have an online estimating tool to where it gives you a ballpark on where you're going to be at, and that way you're not wasting your time reaching out to a company.
Because you don't want to go with somebody if you can't afford it in the first place.
Exactly.
Right?
So what that does, it gives them a huge broad. I mean, you're anywhere, 25% either way. It can either be on the cheaper side or a little more expensive, just depending on what you want, what it takes to get the job done.
The technology aspect of it isn't always an interesting conversation in this room because in most ways it helps, right? But obviously you just kind of mentioned it gives it a ballpark. What benefits do you get from technology in that standpoint? And B, what are kind of some of the hurdles that you're trying to get over from a technology standpoint?
So I think the technology, like the estimating online, it keeps tire kickers away, which sounds awful, but any company can tell you if they do a home service, they're going there.
I think we all know people that go to open houses to be nosy and things like that. So yeah,
I think what technology is bringing is, I'm not going out or sending a guy to do an estimate, and the customer is like, oh my gosh, we haven't built a fence in 20 years. I can't believe how expensive it's gotten, or can't believe what all includes now, the whole list, and then they decide not to do it because it's just too expensive. So that app,
eggs are like $6 a carton. Why wouldn't fencing go up, right?
Yeah, exactly. So what that does, I think companies should be incorporating that because it does save time when it comes to tire
not just
kickers.
yours, but the clients as well.
Clients,
right?
yeah, you know, because I don't like interrupting my day for someone to come up and tell me it's going to be $5,000 more than what I would paid.
Sure. For a piece of vinyl or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
You brought it up. You guys do offer a ton of options from vinyl to wood to steel, even chain link. And I think fencing as a whole has evolved a little bit, but I think it's a little bit different in the Midwest maybe than on the coast on in either direction. What do you got? What would you say is your guys' most commonly installed fence from a material standpoint?
Wood privacy.
Why is that?
It's efficient. It's cheaper than vinyl, and I think it's more appealing. But up here we get wind.
Sure.
And so far, wind and vinyl hasn't done very well from what I've seen up here.
You're Joplin, Missouri native. What is the biggest difference between doing business in Joplin and doing business in Omaha?
The volume.
Just because it's a larger city? Sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's 1.4 million people in the metro of Omaha, and there's 100,000 in Joplin metro.
Sure.
And you get a lot more options on customers, too.
A lot of people that have been here their whole life talk about Omaha being a small town and a big city. Do you get that feel as somebody that moved here outside the city?
We do, and that's one of the reasons why I moved up here. I mean, we live, near Bennington, kind of in between,
so which is still a small city.
Still a small city, but it's conveniently based to where like we can still get, as 3 kids, we can get our stuff delivered.
Yeah.
To from Walmart,
which is 20 minutes.
Within 20 minutes. Yeah. So, but we're far enough. Like we have to make a point if we want to go into the downtown city busy life, right? And we're outside far enough to where the traffic really doesn't deter my wife from work. I mean, she works 20 minutes away. She leaves on time. In the morning, she's good.
Right.
So we're far enough to where we can miss the busy.
Well, it brings up an interesting point too, because Bennington's exploding, Gretna's growing, Elkhorn's seeing a renaissance, North and Omaha, South Omaha are putting a ton of money into their respective communities also. Are you guys seeing that from a business standpoint too? Is business growing at the rate of the city to some degree?
So we're fairly new up here. I mean, we moved up here in July.
Sure.
I decided to kind of dabble around with the fencing company and
because you'd owned a different company previously.
I did.
Yeah.
So this is new adventure on this side, but I didn't really start keeping track of what was going on until beginning of September. I just seen a whole lot of posts on Nextdoor about, because a lot of storms came through this year.
Sure.
So with that data, it put a lot of these companies back.
They needed somebody.
Very far back, very far back. I mean, you're talking 14, 16 weeks out.
Yeah, we had a neighbor down the street that waited 18 months for a fence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, it's a home service, so it's filling the gap, right? Like what does the city need? What do these towns need? What do customers need?
Sure.
So I piddled around. I mean, I even called a few companies, kind of got, to see where they were at, on time frame. I'm like, let's just kind of try to do this. And then I kind of started just doing small repairs. And next, I thought
exploded.
Yeah, I thought December was going to be the cutoff, but I mean, we're still booked out.
You gave a surprising at the end of that. How you were caught off guard by how much you were needed?
Very caught off guard. I was not expecting it. I mean, we went, number wise. I mean, we brought in projected. We'll do just off the 3 months.
When that number is higher than projected, that's a good thing.
Yeah. I was expecting to be dead at the end of December, like I said, and I've been, constant leads coming in, still closing deals and. In January, I mean, we still got jobs booked down until February. I mean, weather pending. It's getting pretty cold, so things might have to be pushed out.
That was going to be my next question, because not only do you get the storms in Omaha and the Nebraska surrounding areas, but you get the cold winter. You get the hot summers too. And you mentioned you guys started in July. How much do you ramp up when it gets warmer, and how much does the downtick kind of come when it gets colder? So it's going to be 55 today too. That's not bad news
we
either.
Started the company in October, so we moved up here in July.
Sure. Okay.
So, like I said,
you went into this expecting to be cold.
Yeah, I knew. Like I said, I thought I was kind of prepping, getting processes in place for springtime, because that's when I really thought we were going to take off. But I mean, we just kind of deal with the cold. We get the jobs in when we can, when it's not negative 10 degrees outside. I'm not going to make guys be building fence. I mean,
sure.
And customers here.
And most homeowners understand that.
Yeah, and honestly, I've had a lot of good feedback with customers. A lot of them are, I've had great experience with customers, very understanding, because they know it's cold.
Well, and you mentioned wood, and obviously wood shrinks in the cold and expands in the heat. You guys haven't necessarily had to deal with the latter yet, but how much are you prepping for that anticipation from a construction standpoint?
Like how much volume?
Not even that, just like the fact that, hey, it's going to be a lot different to build this fence in November than necessarily maybe June.
Yeah. So I think,
or is it's just wood and it's just as simple as
wood.
that?
I think it's the same.
Okay.
I mean, long, winter time it's a little different because you gotta let the concrete cure a little.
Yeah,
know. So when we set posts now, we
which
wait.
I think a lot of people don't think about because they don't see the concrete, right?
Yeah, so we wait a while. I mean, you can have posts set, and depending on temperature, I usually wait a week or two before we start adding to the post. And I want to make sure that post is nice and set before. But wintertime, I mean, you can get a next day turnaround. I mean,
because it's the same thing.
Same.
You don't even need the concrete most months in the winter.
Yeah.
Right?
So during summertime, we'll set posts, and the next day we should be able to go out there and actually complete the fence. But in theory, but the goal is to set 4, 5, 6 houses in a week and come back and set the.
How often is it a 2-day job versus maybe a 4 or 5-day job?
Not very.
Sure.
I mean, it depends on how busy we are. Like right now, we got 4 going on, so it's kind of with the weather, it's been a little different. We kind of have to move things around and kind of start a little earlier when we want to, or
you got to work when you can.
Work when we can, yeah. So it really weather permitting up here right now. So
we're catching up with Matthew Schleuning of Fencing Company of Omaha here on the Spotlight Omaha podcast, brought to you by Pixel Fire Marketing and Pyramid Contractors. Not only are you guys helping out homeowners, you're helping out business owners. You guys do commercial fencing as well. Does that seem to be the part of the business that could grow the most?
Depends how you look at it. A lot of businesses, especially smaller businesses, they don't really like to deal with commercial.
Sure.
And I think that's because of the payment terms, as we kind of discussed. I mean, sometimes these companies set out 30, 60, 90-day terms, which when you're a small business, it's hard to fork out the $5, $10, $30, $40,000. You just got to be able to have that sitting till you're paid.
Sure.
As for a growth perspective, I think it really depends on what you want as a company. I mean, I know of a guy, super nice guy. He sold his home service based company for $100 million, and he focused on residential.
Wow. Okay.
So I think it really depends on what
you
want to target. Yeah.
One of the fastest growing things we mentioned HOAs is gated communities, and a lot of those come with motorized fencing, which you guys offer as well. But that comes with a sense of security too, and there's obviously cards or codes that get. Do you guys install that type of stuff, or does that get outsourced to a secondary company?
Because that's something when it comes to codes and electrical and the motorized. We'll install them, but we'll hire that out to get it hooked up and functioning because there's some programming you got to do and adjustments and timing and all that. So
we were talking a little bit before the camera went on about what the idea for growth of the business is. You said you'd like to expand outside of the Omaha area and maybe turn it into like a franchise model. Why is something like that such an interesting viewpoint for you to take the business in that direction, hopefully and eventually someday?
Well, it adds value as a whole. So, if we ever want to exit, because I have 2 other partners in on this, I'm a majority holder.
Sure.
So if we ever want to exit, knowingly that it can be reciprocated somewhere else, it adds value as a whole. I mean, it adds what you call a multiplier. So instead of a 1x, we can get a 3x of it if we ever do decide to sell, or even we want to find get a loan against it, go to the bank and say, hey, we want to use our business as collateral, even helps with loans. So,
we got one in Des Moines or Sioux City.
Yeah, so it just
whatever.
adds value to it as a whole.
Any part of you want to kind of give back to the Joplin community? We talked about storms up here, and obviously just a few years ago, Joplin was riddled by tornadoes as well. You're from there. You moved here. Look kind of happy to get out of there. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
let's say we moved for a reason.
Sure.
I mean,
I got you.
The Joplin community is a little different.
Okay.
I'm not talking bad about anybody, but
it's very. That's just your perspective.
Sometimes it's race to the bottom.
Sure.
And that it happens here, it happens everywhere, right?
Sure.
But you have a bigger market, so you can kind of detour away from racing to the bottom.
Sure.
A lot of it happens everywhere is undercutting other companies. But from what I learned up here,
that's an interesting. I want to talk about that because the one thing, and I brought this up several times, but it's truly amazing to me because I think we look at business as this cutthroat environment. It's dog eat dog. You got to be first or you're last. But it seems to be the thought process around most industries is there's enough work out there for everybody. Is that kind of what you've got from the fencing industry too?
Absolutely.
Really? Wow. Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah, because I'm comparable, and I know other companies kind of probably do the same thing. They kind of check rates, or they ask other customers, what did they quote you at? Because I always see if I'm comparable, because I don't want to undercut myself as a business and as an owner, but I also don't want to undercut another company because I know the expense, I know the headache of owning a business. So I definitely don't want to be that guy that.
And you want to provide the best experience to the client.
Absolutely. So we want to be fair and competitive. I mean, I've had quotes higher than some other companies, but also they've had quotes higher than mine, and it goes back and forth. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's how it should be. I mean, I really think that being in your community of the service you provide to basically kind of set rates. It should be a thing, but
Sure.
a lot of people don't understand.
You mentioned you guys have a couple of crews out working today. How difficult was it for you to open this company up and then hire people, bring them in, and take your business that you feed your wife and kids with, hand it off to somebody as an employee and let them go do their thing? Or was that pretty simple for you?
I think it was kind of easier this time around. The first company I had, we had almost 90 people working, so a lot of learning experiences on the first go around.
It's 90 headaches you got to deal with too, right?
Yeah, it was. And so I think hiring is not as stressful to me as it was.
Sure.
You know, I've learned if it doesn't work out, get rid of them fast. I mean, it's unfortunate if, you know, it costs money to train, it costs money to submit paperwork, it costs money for taxes, and, you know, people start to add up a bill when they're not producing.
Absolutely. And we're catching up with Matthew Schleuning here of Fencing Company of Omaha on the Spotlight Omaha podcast, brought to you by Pixel Fire Marketing and Pyramid Contractors. I want to talk about you personally. You're a business owner, you're an entrepreneur, you're a boss, you're a husband, you're a father. How do you separate all that and kind of keep time for a schedule to somehow make sense?
The first time with the first business, I was horrible.
Okay.
I was very bad at
Would your
time
wife
management.
agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I wasn't.
That was kind of rhetorical.
You know, she would. And I'm okay with saying that because
Sure.
I think a lot of people are embarrassed to say, you know, as a young entrepreneur, as a first time,
You're all in.
And it should be, but you got to find the balance.
Right.
I mean, you know, a lot of people say I'm doing it for my family, but I think when you start to grow, you lose that touch of you're
doing it for your
family, because if you're truly doing it for family, you learn how to manage your time.
Well, to your point, at some point you start doing it for 90 other families at the same time. You got to manage that
and
as well.
Yep, and that was my first drawback.
And what's your wife's name?
Shelby.
I want to give a shout out to Shelby. Make sure she gets inclusion.
And, you know, the first drawback was I was so consumed by my own business that I lost touch with my wife, my kids. You know,
what does your wife do?
She's a dental hygienist.
Okay.
You know, but with the first business, you know, I let her quit working, you know, because she didn't, you know, I told her that her career was.
My wife's a stay-at-home mom too, so I get it.
I told her career was being a inconvenience to the business, which at the time it kind of was. You know, it was kind of rude for me to say, but that's how focused I was on that business to grow it, because we were growing at a tremendous rate, and I needed her focus at the house because I wasn't doing my part as a husband, you know. But
I think that's incredible that you can look back on that and have that kind of foresight, because a lot of people make that mistake and aren't able to see it too.
Yeah,
so
and I think
that's an incredible sign of maturity.
Like I said, I think a lot of people are just afraid to admit it. Like a lot of times they're not doing they're not doing it for their business. They're doing it for the money. And I can say I've done it. I've been there.
Yeah.
I made a lot of money. I mean, like I said, we were in 12 different states with the last company, and when I had the opportunity to let it burn down, I did, because I was that far over it. I mean, and part of that is the home life. I needed to be there for.
It is, if you don't have support at home, it's impossible to be successful, and I don't care who you are.
Yep, and I didn't have the processes. You know, I didn't understand what processes and I needed in place to be able to provide back my time to my family.
I don't know if this is the same for you, but it's for me, and I know a lot of other entrepreneurs, is you have to be the person putting out every single fire you don't feel comfortable when you're first starting a business. And
Absolutely.
I think that's a big struggle for a lot of people.
It is, and I think a lot of people deal with as a man is letting go of responsibility. And now I'm like, okay, what can we do to get rid of this? Let's get rid of this, and let's get rid of that. So after I got rid of the first company, I always told myself, if I had to do it again, the first thing I'm going to do is find partners, people who've done it, right? People
somebody can go to the foxhole with you, right?
Absolutely. Or even just help on the back end on knowing, like, what systems do we need in place to get this to $10 million a year in revenue? You know, because that's what I look at, right? We're trying to design the business to where we want to be with not where we're at.
Well, I think there's layers there, right? It's, hey, we want to provide good customer service. We want to make sure we have the best product available. We want to make sure we're putting a fair price out there. We want to give free estimates to make sure people have the ability to have access to our product. And then you make money, right? And I think so many people at the front end, and I don't want to speak for you or anybody else, but I think a lot of people, the first mistake they make is, I got to make $1 million tomorrow. Well, you kind of got to walk before you can run, right?
Yes, you do. And, you know, like this time we got ahead, before we even really started doing anything, we got the ads running, we got the websites, we got the phone numbers, the emails, the CRM system. So we created a foundation, as you could say, to be able to provide the best customer service on a higher level,
Yeah,
right?
give a shameless plug real quick. If you need help with that, check out pixelfiremarketing.com. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think building a foundation as an early entrepreneur, is critical to grow into, because you don't want
you don't know what you don't know, right? Like, it's
correct.
impossible
And
to
like
know you need all those things without knowing you need all those things.
unless you experience it, or like I said, finding people that do know, because there's a lot of people out there. I've learned a lot of people who have good, successful businesses. Successful is very broad. But people who have their freedom, a lot of those guys will sit down and explain or answer questions. And
I think a lot of people define freedom as success too.
Yeah,
being able to walk away and go on a vacation.
Absolutely.
Not looking at your phone every day.
There's guys that do it every day. So as a young entrepreneur, figuring out what you want to do, find guys like that, because those guys will help.
They probably know a thing or two. Yeah,
they want to help. Guys who's been in business, or guys who have a few failed attempts, like those guys know what it takes.
They've learned a thing.
They learn. It takes a lot of time.
You mentioned that you're a father as well. You've got 3 smaller children. How much do your kids know about what Dad does?
My oldest is almost 4. He just know Dad goes to work.
Right.
He just know Dad's gone.
He's not out there with a hammer some days.
Not yet. Not yet. This summertime, I assure you, he will be out there, and because he'll be 4.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good time to he'll understand.
Sure.
He'll get to know, like, work. My dad works outside, or my dad drives around all day to check on things. So he'll be able to know. Get his hands on stuff and be actively working and building.
A lot of the contractors we talk to find pride in driving around telling their wife or kids, hey, we built that one, or we did this over here. Is that something you find yourself doing often?
Not as much, I think, as the first business, right? I think, because the goal is not to be the face of the company.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, because if you
it's crazy how often that conversation's been happening lately.
Yeah, you don't want to be the face of it. You should still take pride, because your guys do that work. It is your work, and I'm sure up here, because what I did the first time is a little different.
Yeah, it's a completely different industry.
Different industry. So up here, I'll probably will, because I do take pride. I mean,
that's why I asked, because I kind of got that sense.
I'm very happy to do what we do. I'm very happy to provide, and give back. So I think I see why people put their signs on their work. I mean, you can go to any fence almost within 40 miles, and if a big company built it, their logo's on it.
Sure. We've hit on a lot of things. Is there anything about your business that we haven't talked about yet today?
What's that?
Is there anything you'd like people to know about your business that we haven't asked about?
No, I think kind of
okay.
Moving along.
This is Matthew Schleuning with Fencing Company of Omaha. Where can they find you at? How do they get a hold of you?
So you can find me on Facebook, Google search. Phone number, email. It's all listed right there on our website. So.
And again, that's Fencing Company of Omaha. Thanks for taking time to do this today, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me.
We'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Spotlight Omaha podcast, brought to you by Pixel Fire Marketing inside the Pyramid Contractor Studio.